Welcome to the Hollis Chapman Show, where we celebrate the power of words and the beauty of storytelling. Join us on this journey as we delve into the minds of successful authors and small business owners who have mastered the art of crafting captivating narratives that inspire, educate, and entertain. Prepare to be inspired as we explore the boundless possibilities that come from sharing stories and experiences that shape our lives and ignite our passions. Through heartfelt conversations and insightful discussions, we uncover the wisdom and creativity that fuel these incredible individuals in their pursuit of greatness. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let the magic of storytelling transport you to new worlds and perspectives. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and uplifted as we embark on this storytelling journey together. Stay tuned for an episode filled with wisdom, inspiration, and the power of words. Welcome to the Hollis Chapman Show.
Sure. Our special guest today is an organizational advisor with more than 25 years of experience working with executives. That's outstanding. Um, Human systems that drive performances inside complex organizations. So his whole thing is going to big executives and talking to them and say, hey, let me see what you got going on. Let's see if we can fix what the problem is. And I think now a lot of people, young people are quitting, a lot of people are doing different things. So you probably have a lot of ammunition. You probably keep you real busy. But without further ado, though, let's welcome to the show our special guest, Kirsten Baller. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Hollis. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very, very much. Hey, tell us a bit more about yourself and your new work.
Sure. I started in a very technical profession. I'm trained as a professional engineer. And I realized pretty early in my career that I had a big gap on the human behavior side. So like a good engineer, though, I stumbled along for about a decade, taking best practice after best practice, advancing my education, getting more certifications, and none of it really made a difference until I stumbled into social psychology. And, that early in my career, I knew there had to be a better way to do project work at that time, which was where I started my career. And that's what led me into social psychology, neuroscience, and organizational behavior. And then I realized the same things that apply in project world apply in leadership and organizations as a whole. So that's my work now, is helping teams get better, helping leaders up their game so that they can lead their teams and organizations more effectively.
When you first started, you got your wow moment, you knew you need some things that need to be changed. What was it like going to your first big time executive and to start talking to him about leadership? Kind of bring us back to that, because I know you're skilled now. I know you got a lot of passion and a lot of things behind it. That first time, you must have okay, let me get this right now before this guy kicks out the door, because they got big egos. Those executives got the big egos when they sit. So how was that first time, and how did you get over that hump to start doing what you're doing and be successful now?
Sure. Well, I mean, as successful as any executive is, they're still humans and they still have their own insecurities.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to position the opportunities that you see to them in a way that will help them either personally or help the organizations that they're leading. And if you focus on what are the true underlying root causes of where some of the symptoms are that they're seeing, you can generally build a strong case and get them on board. Now, I think of one situation, for example, early in my career, I had worked for a big multinational consultancy for about 10 years. And then when I forged out on my own at 32, I had one of those moments sitting with a high-powered executive, very politically connected and very, very knowledgeable, right? So, I mean, your question brought back the memories of my own insecurities and wondering, what the heck am I doing in this boardroom with this person? So that said, I just went back to my to what I knew best and engaged in a discussion about solving problems and not passing blame. And I realized in that situation, which carries forward to other people I've worked with, again, they're human beings, and they will give you space to make a mistake, or maybe not give optimal advice. They'll work with you. The good ones will anyways.
Yeah.
So you just have to lean into, they've hired you for your knowledge and your expertise. Don't try to tell them what they want to hear. Tell them what you think. They've hired you for your own unique perspective on things. So that's what you got to bring.
Well, that's great tips. Those are wonderful tips there. And the reason why I asked that because a lot of people I talk to, they're newbies, and then when they got some great stuff they want to present, they get nervous, and then they get to the point where they procrastinate a lot, and then they sit there and say, I'm not good enough. Well, you sit there and you were wonderful at explaining, hey, you got to get in the door, you got to get your foot in there, you got to get yourself, tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And that's
Right.
wonderful, wonderful advice. Okay.
Right. It's an esteem issue if you're sitting in that moment scared of being exposed as an
Yeah.
imposter,
Yeah.
you have to work on your esteem and your confidence. And you do that by getting in the boardroom time and
Yeah.
time again and building it in real time.
Yeah.
You can't think that one through. You have to do it.
Perfect. And unfortunately, again, I love the internet. I'm sure you do too for research and stuff like that. But a lot of these people, they kind of fake it to the make it to a point where it's like, this doesn't even make any sense. Oh, you got to do this and you got to do this and you can become very successful. And they're BSing and they're lying because anybody can get on the internet and talk about stuff and stuff like that. Give us your thoughts and opinions about some of the things you see on the internet when these influencers sit there and tell people they should be doing this and this.
Well, sure. I'll be honest. I don't tune into a lot of the noise that's out there on social media. So I choose my sources very carefully.
Yeah,
I filter them before I allow them to influence me too much. I try to get a wide perspective, but my co-author Ellen Weiss was very influential on me when it comes to this. So, you know, I would say seek out sources and resources from people that you trust and respect, and that are regarded as true thought leaders. And then spend some time listening to them and critically think about what are they bringing forward and how does this make sense? Because I was actually just chatting with Ellen about this earlier this week, and he was making the point to me that you can be provocative without having critical thinking skills. And I think that's what you're talking about is there's a lot of provocation out there and you can do that without any substance underneath. So I look for both.
beautiful. One thing I like about when I was reading your bio and stuff, leadership is less about control and more about creating shared ownership. I love that line. I love that. It makes a lot of sense. Kind of dig a little deeper into that line that I just mentioned.
Sure, that's at the heart of what I do. And
Yeah.
and leadership systems are very antiquated. They're decades old, and a lot of it's come from industrialization where you think of Colt manufacturing, handguns using interchangeable parts, and Henry Ford building the assembly line 100 years later. That's infiltrated our organizations, and we look at our work through that. So if you believe that you can't trust your team, you have to watch their moves, you need to, tell them what to do. That's an old model. It doesn't work in today's environment because it bottlenecks your organization,
Right.
both in terms of capacity and the quality of thought. It's constrained then to the magical leaders that are anointed leaders at the top of the organization. So what we have to do instead is build a space where people are able to contribute and leaders back off and don't see themselves as the experts with all of the right answers. And you can just look at what Satya Nadella did with Microsoft. When he took the helm, it was a know-it-all organization, right? Your value as a leader was having the right answers, and that's very common,
Mhm.
especially in technical professions. But he deliberately made a transformation of the belief system of the organization to leaders are there to coach, not to answer questions in direct traffic. And the results speak for themselves. And what that does is it builds a learning organization. So,
Mhm.
what it looks like when I work with my team or I work with leaders with their teams, rather than a leader being the first to jump in with the answer, even though you know what the answer is, you've been there, you've done that. You have to create the space for people to be willing to contribute, share their ideas. And honestly, most of the time the team is already there and knows
Yeah.
what you know.
Yeah.
And some of the time they actually often they see things I don't see or the leader can't see. So by doing that, you're helping them to build their critical thinking skills that you already have. You're building intrinsic motivation because they're giving them a you're giving them a purpose to why they're at work, which is honestly why you've hired them. You've hired
Yeah.
them for their critical thinking and their unique view on their work. Like, why would we bypass that and turn it into a robotic type of a role where they're on an assembly line building part of a widget, which in the workplace looks like going away and writing a report or, sending an email to somebody. I see that all the time where leaders reduce their team's work to the most trivial,
Mm.
rudimentary steps.
How does the leader learn to let that go? How do they know, okay, I'm going to leave on Monday, I want to take a vacation and let my team do this? How do you know when you're ready? Or you should know right away when you hire the person in the first place. Because I said, I was just reading a book yesterday about that leadership, and a person becomes who's not that confident as you are and say, I gotta answer the question. I gotta handle this problem, stuff like that. Even if I'm on vacation, they'll call me. How do you know it's time to let that go? And it's like, hey, I'm on vacation. Don't call me. Do the job that I hired you for.
I mean, how do you know when it's time to make the change? And I find that change comes out of the darkest moments. So this was certainly my journey. I mean, of all the engineering professions, I'm trained as an industrial systems engineer, which is to look at the world in the most mechanistic way you could.
Yeah,
So I had to face this in my 30s when I realized that it was a stroke of insight and a coach helped me see it. I actually didn't see it on my own. It was a coach that helped me see, Kirsten, your intentions are good. You're trying to help your team grow, but by stepping in and doing things when they're uncomfortable, you're actually stunting their growth and their learning.
perfect.
And she helped me reframe how I could then, what could I do about it? Because the moment of insight isn't helpful if you don't do something about it. So what I was able to do was shift my approach from telling to asking, and also maintaining a boundary of ownership. So just a very simple example, when I built my first consultancy, one of my employees came into my office and was just showing some subtle emotional discomfort with the idea of chairing a meeting. For her, that was quite scary and uncomfortable. And by then, my coach had worked with me, and I was able to, rather than saying no problem, I'll chair the meeting, and you can see how I do it, and then obviously you'll be ready to do it. But instead, I just said, okay, well, you know, what's something that you could do to get ready for the meeting? What do you need from me to support you? Turning it into a discussion to empower them rather than take away ownership. So that plays out millions of times every day across corporate America and throughout the world. And that's where leaders need to make the shift, because
Yeah,
if you don't, you're the bottleneck. You can't
yeah,
complain about how many hours you're working. You can't complain about, I hear often, why can't my team just do it by themselves?
yeah,
It's because you're in the way.
yeah. Just read the book yesterday. I want the same things. That's wonderful. Okay, let's jump to your book, your wonderful book. What prompted you to write this wonderful book? Was there a wow moment there, or you and your co-founder sit there and say, "Okay, it's time now to write this book"? Tell us about the book. I want you to tell us about the cover too, and the title,
Sure.
how that all came about. Go ahead, talk about the book.
Right. Well, if I thought 2 years ago, would I write a book? That was the last thing on my radar.
Yeah,
Ellen Weiss, my co-author, we were talking about it, and he was a big encouragement to do that. Was one of my mentors, Ron, who I acknowledge in the acknowledgments, saying that you need to do this. So that was something that probably pushed me over the starting line. Behind that, though, was it's astonishing when I look at how organizations function that human behavior is often the last thing on leaders' radars, or it's not even on their radar. They look at things like business process, organizational charts, how communication flows. They don't look at things like, why is my team not getting the report done? They don't understand that there's procrastination there potentially, let alone why their team members procrastinating. And even what do I do to help them move through that or manage that situation without taking ownership of it? So, I realized a long time ago that projects and organizations are successful because of human behavior. And our job as leaders is to create the environments that unlock human behavior. So leaders have to change how they show up and model a belief and attitude system, which I call the unwritten rules of engagement in our organizations. Despite the values and missions, everything that's on the wall, you have to live it, breathe it, and behave it to show everybody what those rules of engagement are. And that's really the linchpin in what makes everything in organizations successful. And more interestingly, now with the onslaught of technology, this is your competitive advantage, both as an employee or as a leader or as an organization, is unlocking the human potential, because technology is outsourcing. You're outsourcing low level cognitive work to technology. AI can do basic things now. That's low level cognitive work for humans. And if you position yourself as a person who just does what they're told, you're already obsolete.
Mm.
So um, you need to lean into, how do we unlock and harness the higher level cognitive work that human brains are really good at. So my wife's a medical doctor, and for her, she's astonished at how good AI can be at feeding some symptoms in and getting some diagnostics back, and even remembering things she forgot about.
Yeah.
She's a specialist. Yeah, when it comes to the high level, her true value now has become nuance and subtleties and context with her patients, which is the high level cognitive work. She can take the retrieval of information from AI and some recommendations on symptoms and turn it into something that's more accurate. That's what I'm talking about in the workplace, is better decision making, faster decisions, using AI as a supporting tool, but not a substitute for all of human cognition.
Outstanding. The title, The Hidden Project Drivers, Building Behavior That Drives Success. How did that title come about? And kind of explain that title for us.
Yeah, well, it goes back to maybe where I started the last question, which was, this is the hidden unlock that
Mm.
I'm astonished that most people don't see, but it's very natural in the way that we are brought into the business world. We go through university, we get MBAs, and human behavior is not really on the agenda. And even things like psychology are looked down on from other disciplines in large part. Yet, like, what else do we have in our organizations if not the humans that we've hired, and the brains between their ears and their the skills and unique perspectives that they have? So it was really just saying, hey, look, there's something that's totally hidden to you that is important here, and that's what this book is about. So that would tie into the subtitle,
Yeah.
which is about shaping the environment and unlocking the productive behaviors that you need to be successful, organization wide and in project world. They're the same, very similar.
Did you come up with the title and the cover of the book? Is that you?
Yeah, well,
Oh,
Ellen helped me a bit. So I think Ellen actually said, "Hey, I think your book is this,"
okay.
and so he helped me with that. And then uh, I worked on the cover design with a designer, and that's what we landed on.
Okay, it's beautiful. So if I'm starting something with a team and it's not plans and the tools could be the AI now, what is it about? What is it about to how us to make my team successful?
It's about creating that environment that will encourage the behaviors you want. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a client recently, a senior leader, um, on the most important initiative that organization had ever undertaken, had the eyes of the highest levels of executives in the organization. And that turned into a lot of self-imposed pressure on the team, and in particular, the leader responsible for it. And in one moment, she had trouble containing the anxiety and stress of that burden she was putting on herself. So she lashed out at one of the team members, not in an unpleasant way, not in yelling or name calling by any means, but she was quite unhappy with somebody feeling they hadn't fulfilled their role or what they were supposed to do. And she sent an email that said, um, laid out, took going back to the role description and said, these are your roles, bullet point, and you're not doing them. And without ever talking to the person once, it was just an email that came out of the blue to the victim on the receiving end of it. And on top of it, in the email, justifying why it was sent, saying, putting things down in email helps me to organize my thoughts, with no empathy for what it
Wow.
would be like to receive that email on the other
Yeah.
side, with no courtesy of a discussion prior.
Yeah.
So that's just one very simple example of what plays out every day, where you're establishing the unwritten rules of what it's like to be on that team. And that those things aggregate up to what I call organizational friction. And we certainly want friction. We don't want zero friction, but we don't want too much friction where it starts to be disruptive to the team environment. And those things like that, what do they communicate? They say, you're guilty until proven innocent. And what was
Yeah.
quite interesting in this situation is the employee actually had been doing everything without the leader knowing, and going above and beyond and doing things
Wow.
beyond their role.
Wow.
So it was actually quite an embarrassing moment, I imagine, for the leader, having shot that missile out, finding out it was actually the opposite truth and not taking accountability for it. Like, so what are you communicating? Guilty
Wow.
before proven innocent?
Yeah.
You don't, you're going to at any time get an
Yeah.
unsolicited email creating a highly uncertain and unstable environment. You are going to be judged against, the letter of the law before you have a discussion. Like, I could just keep going.
Yeah.
Right? So that's
Right.
what you were there to create. You have to, if you aren't able to regulate your emotions, you're not fit to be a leader.
Yeah.
That's part of the fiduciary responsibility, I call it, that you bring to the table. And you can't blame everybody else for that. You have to own that, or you're not fit to lead, especially in a senior position.
Wow.
So in that kind of environment, you have to take the moment, skip a step, and just say, hey, I'm going to give the person the benefit of the doubt here, and I'm going to have a call with them. I'll get
Yeah.
together, have a chat with them, ask some questions to calibrate my diagnostic, because I could be wrong here,
Yeah.
rather than go on the offensive.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
powerful stuff. Please tell us, where do we go after this show to learn more about you and what you do, and buy your book? Where do we go?
sure. Yeah, thanks for the question. So best places to find me are on LinkedIn, Kirsten, Kursten, Faller, F as in Fred, ALLER.com. Or you can, so that's my website, and same thing on LinkedIn. So kirstenfaller.com or on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Tell us how these guys, or these ladies, got so successful, and from the outside, Meta too, their leadership is just outstanding. Is that true, or is this only stuff that we're being shared with?
Right. Well, I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think, one, they're inspiring. I mean, if you
Yeah.
think of someone like
Oh,
Elon Musk, you can't
yeah.
argue with his ability to build a purposeful experience for his teams and allow them to do that, something that's intrinsically motivating for them. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And they'll sign up just to work with him and do what they do, right? Which
Yeah.
they see themselves as advancing civilization. He must have a way also to create and shape that environment around what the expectations are. I get the sense it's certainly not some superficial organization where we all sing kumbaya and we avoid
Yeah.
conflict and uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
I suspect he knows how to create uh, and optimize friction in the organization to unlock innovation. I mean, you can't have highly innovative organizations if you don't know how to manage behavioral friction.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
Pixar, one of the divisions of Disney, would be a good example of that, right?
Mhm.
When Toy Story 2 was in trouble, they formed the Brain Trust, and that's what that's all about, is just candid feedback that, the rules of engagement where the director needs to hear it, but can certainly make their own decisions on where they go with their feedback, with the feedback from their colleagues, and largely credited for the success of recovering that movie and successes of subsequent movies. So, if I named a few, it would be that:
Yeah.
optimizing friction, not being scared of conflict, creating purpose, and creating the behavioral environment of what it's like to, what's expected of me when I show up here.
Perfect. Well said, sir. Oh, what does fear look like on the inside teams? Okay, so you talk about teams, you talk about putting things together. You talked about the one lady who spit out the email and it wasn't correct. Is there other things that you made when you walk into a business and maybe the population didn't see it, but you walked in, you start talking to people, you say, "Oh shoot, there's a lot of fear in this organization." What does that look like? So as a person who's working with a team, you say, Hollis, if you start to see this, there's a problem coming down the road. So if I'm working with somebody, all of a sudden everybody's not really talking to each other, it's like walking on the eggshells and stuff like that. Is there potential to be a big problem if you see that in an organization? Because I have seen it myself. I mentioned names, but it's like, this is not good. I'm waiting for somebody to quit because this is not good. The eggshells don't want to go to work. You can't wait to get off work and stuff like that. Is that the start of saying this is gonna be a bad thing?
That's actually the end. Like if it's at that point,
Yeah,
you got a big problem.
yeah,
So I use language. If you are present and listen to what people say and how they say it, and it's really about empathy. In the book, I talk about the three dimensions of empathy: experiential, intellectual, and emotional. That's the way into understanding what somebody else may or may not be experiencing on the other side. And the patterns are very repeatable. So when I listen and I pick up on some fear, normally I can have a pretty good idea what the narrative is going on inside somebody. And so I'm looking for subtle things because, like I said, if it gets to the point with what you're talking about, they got a big challenge there that they've got to
yeah,
shift.
yeah,
But it will look like subtle things behaviorally. Procrastination's always rooted in fear of something. Often it's
right,
fear of being exposed as incompetent, fear of judgment. So what do? We avoid the emotional discomfort of writing the report or sending the email. And so if you see somebody that isn't getting something done, pretty good sign that there's procrastination underneath there, and it's pretty easy to ask a couple of questions to find, is that it's an emotional regulation issue is what it is at its heart.
yeah,
And so, I would ask some questions to diagnose it, pinpoint it, and then I'd use coaching to either reduce the threat that they're perceiving, potentially of being judged or criticized of the deliverable. I'd increase the reward.
mm,
Or if it's an established pattern and it's not changing and you've tried and tried through the best of your coaching abilities, your last resort is to increase the threat. But when you increase the threat, that's like taking a big stick, and as soon as the stick is gone, the behavior will go back to the way it was.
right,
So that's why it's always the last resort. So, that's just one example of procrastination. Fear also sounds like, oh, I better check with, John, my boss, because I'm not quite sure what decision I should make there, right? So it's like avoidance of accountability or ownership or making decisions, deferring things upwards is another good sign. Um, and then, of course, the more visible signs of conflict, like you're talking about, those are clear examples that people are scared.
yeah, yeah,
Failure to or unwillingness to contribute in a
yeah,
conversation is one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could keep talking about many ones, but that's a
That's
few.
outstanding. Yeah, no, that's well said. Again, listeners, this is part of what he does in his book. This is a wonderful book. And this time out there, we need this. We need this, what he has to offer. Get the book because some reason or another, last month we had 95,000 people hired across country. The numbers are way down low. There's a reason why again, I'm really stifled at why young people work and quit so soon, so quick. They don't have any kind of loyalty to anything. So it's really strange that way. But again, that's another story there too. And why aren't we getting and creating better leaders out there for the future? My son's one of them. He says 28. And I'm trying to make sure he understands about the future. He's 28 and he's doing the AI thing secondary. I'm sitting there thinking, dude, this is a big part of what your future is going to be. Why aren't you looking into it more and more and more? But again, that's a whole other show right there. So I hope they need people like yourself to try to highlight what to look for in leadership and how they do things. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah, my
Uh,
pleasure.
be- Before we get to the final comment, please tell us again, where do we go after the show to learn more about you and get your book? Where do we go?
Sure. So LinkedIn, Kirsten Fowler is the search, and you'll find uh, find me there. I've got a weekly newsletter and
Perfect.
daily post. And
Yeah,
then you can go to kirstenfaller.com, find out more about the book. You can get links to Amazon and other retailers, and find out a bit too. I've got a second book coming out here later in the years. So looking forward to getting that out.
perfect. Final comments, sir. If you can project leaders one mindset shift that would immediately improve results, what would it be?
Make your job easier on yourself. Just start asking questions. Stop
Yeah,
telling everybody what to do, or stroking your ego by sharing all of your expertise and knowledge. Just ask more questions. Your
that's
team's
wonderful.
got it. And
Yeah,
you're there to build their critical thinking skills and grow them so that they can take the load of the organization and not you. I mean,
that's wonderful.
just get a bit lazy and take that pressure off of yourself.
One thing I learned from doing the podcast and talking to wonderful people like yourself is become a better listener. Leaders, if they can say something, but sit back and listen, that's amazing how things will work out if become a better listener, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Our special guest today, Kirsten Faller. Thank you so much. Have a great this weekend. Be safe now. Watch out for those fireworks. Don't lose a finger or two. But have a great weekend, sir. Come on back anytime. You're awesome. Great stuff. We'll talk to you real soon, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Hollis.
Appreciate you. All right, guys. What a great show. I'm going to end it with this.
Authors
Yeah.
and small business owners, turn your book and/or your business into a streaming television brand. You wrote the book, you built the business. Now it's time to be seen on Roku and Amazon Fire Television. The Hollis Chapman Show helps authors and small business owners get featured on a professionally produced TV show, appear on Roku and Amazon Fire Television streaming platforms, build authority and credibility, reach new audiences beyond social media, receive in-house marketing support. This isn't just an interview. This is brand positioning. If you're serious about in 2026, let's put your brand on television. Appy now for a featured television plus podcast spotlight. Book your strategy email today.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you. Have a
My
great
pleasure.
weekend. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, he as well. Take